Hey guys, welcome back to Willpower Garage. Today I've got a real interesting one. Well, it's not this. Although I do have to do some work on this. This is my personal Volkswagen Eurovan, or the family van as we like to call it. But today I figured we'll sort of do a little bit of a tangent. And if you guys have been following all my other videos, you know I basically do step-by-step repairs and how-tos to show you guys how to do a lot of these repairs yourself and save money from having to pay someone else to do it. But today I've got a sort of a fun one. If any of you guys are into older American cars or race cars, I've got a little bit of both. Alright, before I show you guys the car, again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share these videos. As you guys subscribe, it helps keep me going to bring you guys more content like this. So if you're a returning viewer, thanks for coming. If you're new to the channel, well, thanks for coming by. I hope you subscribe, and yeah, let's get to it. Alright, so today what I have is an absolutely ridiculous car. I mean, it's ridiculous. These cars were made famous because they had a small flaw that would cause them to burst into flames if they were rear-ended. And if you already know what car I'm talking about, leave a comment below. Let us know that you knew what it was. But yeah, what I have here is a 1974 Ford Pinto with a cowl hood. Well, a little different. The cowl hood should be somewhat of an indication that this isn't your average Pinto. And then if I kind of come around to the side here, oh yeah, that is a 26-inch tall Mickey Thompson racing slick with little pizza cutters in the front. So yeah, we're going to do a little bit of tuning to this thing. Nothing crazy, basic drivability tuning. This car has a 347 stroked Ford small block. It's got a Holey carburetor on it. Pretty basic setup, but it runs like absolute crap. I mean, that's the only way to put it. It's been sitting for a real long time. It has fresh racing gas in it, but the carburetor is not exactly happy. So I'm gonna, I guess, sort of show you guys what I'm gonna go through to try to see what's going on with the carburetor, adjust it if necessary, which I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to adjust it, and possible rebuild. I don't think it needs to be rebuilt. I think it might actually be a vacuum leak, maybe from the gasket or something. As far as I know, this car was running at some point. I mean, it was built as a runner, but I don't really know a lot of information about it, and the owner of the car doesn't really know a lot of information about it either. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of research and see if we can't get this thing to run the way it should, and be a fun little street machine. So let me open the hood here for you guys and show you guys what we're working with. Alright, so like I said, we have a Ford small block in here. It's got a Holey 4150 double pump. This is a 6R carburetor. Basically what that means is it's a racing version of Holey's 4150. Obviously it doesn't have the choke horn. That pretty much, in simplest terms, that's what makes it their race line carburetor. Also has dual metering blocks on it for primary and secondary. Aside from that, it's a basic Holey carburetor. There are a few little things that are wrong with this thing as well that I have to take care of. I've got some coolant sitting down here, which not exactly sure where it's coming from yet. It might be the gasket on the water pump, could be the hoses from up top. I know I also have header gasket leak on the passenger side here. And then the other big thing I have to take care of is the aluminum oil pan. It has a crack in it, so we're gonna have to pull that off, clean it up really well, TIG weld it back together. All right, so like I said, I'm having real issues with this thing starting. I'm having a lot of issues with it even trying to idle once I get it started. And now I haven't touched anything on the carburetor yet, because like I said, I don't know much about this car. I don't know where anything or any of the adjustments are. I don't know if they're way off or whatever. I want to at least you know, set basic adjustments on this thing to make sure that we have at least an equal starting point, so we can basically get this thing running, and then we could take it from there, you know, with the fine tuning and everything. So one of the first things I noticed is the primary accelerator pump here is not squirting. So the linkage is here. It basically, when you open the throttle, it pushes on a diaphragm on the underside, which forces fuel through the jets here, which gives you, you know, a squirt of fuel for acceleration to accelerate. This one's clogged, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off this jet here. We're going to make sure that everything's clear there. If we still have issues there, I'll pull off the float bowl, and we'll check the diaphragm, make sure it's not ruptured. That can happen, especially with modern fuels, with the alcohol. A lot of times it'll eat away at the rubber. And looking at it, it looks like it has the green type, which is like a Viton, if I'm not mistaken. It's something Holey came up with to sort of combat these alcohol contents in these fuels, so you won't have these issues. That's the first thing I'm going to check. Next, I'm probably going to pull out the sight plug here for the float, make sure that the fuel level is set properly. I'll do it for both the front and the rear bowls, just to make sure everything's there. And then before we start this thing, I'm going to take the idler bleed screws, and on this carburetor there are one for each of the venturis in the carburetor here. I don't know if that's the right term, but that's what I'm going to say. And I'm basically going to turn these in first, because I want to know where they are, see if they're all even. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust them all, probably all the way in, lightly seated, and then out one turn, so they're all equal. Once we have that, we'll get this thing started. You know, obviously set our idle. This is our idle screw. And we're going to try to tune out the air bleeds here. And one of the ways to try to do that, at least evenly, is with a vacuum gauge and a tachometer, so you can see the subtle changes in RPM. So from here, let me take off the primary squirter jet here and see if we have anything going on with that. All right, I don't know if you guys can see it. Come on, focus. There we go. This is my accelerator pump jet, and just as I had suspected, there was a little bit of dirt. I know you really can't see it, but if you see down there, there's a tiny little hole, coordinates to this hole, and there was a little bit of dirt in there, so it was plugging up the jets. So I'm gonna go just take this over to the garage. I'm gonna blow some carb cleaner through this and some little compressed air, and we'll reinstall it, make sure this thing is squirting. Alright guys, got it all cleaned up, back installed, and now you can see fuel squirting out. So that was my problem, at least for that circuit. You know, that'll help me with starting it, because now I can actually squirt fuel into the intake manifold to get this thing to fire off. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with adjusting my idle screw. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to back this off till the throttle blades are closed, and I'll probably turn this in about a turn or so. Basically, I just want to get the throttle valve off of the seat. I'm also going to run in my air bleeds, and again, like I said, I'm going to count these to see how far they are or where they are set right now, and then I'm going to set these probably between 1.5 turns. I think I might try with 1 turn initially just to try to get this thing to fire off. You know, depending on who you talk to, and some people will say anywhere between 1 turn to 2 turns, turn and a half. You know, basically I just want to get this somewhere close where I can start to adjust this. So I'm going to adjust all 4 of my air bleeds right away, my throttle valve there, and we'll see if we can't get this thing to fire up. Alright, one other quick thing I want to check before I fire this thing up. Now, like I said, I have my throttle blades set, so they're just opening. I've also got my air bleeds. What I did was I turned them out a turn and a half, but I just want to make sure my float levels are good. So I'm going to take off the sight plugs on either side, and I'm just going to check the fuel level there. So I got the plug out. Basically, you just want the fuel level to be level with the bottom of this plug, and that's what I have in the front bowl there. So this one is set okay. I'm going to put that guy back in. I'll go to the back float bowl now. So I'm going to drop the gasket. The rear's a little low, but it's okay. Let's see if we can't get this thing to fire up and idle, and then we'll worry about that. Alright, so I've got my carburetor basically set. We're now ready to fire this thing up. I've got my dwell tach-meter connected, black to ground, my green lead to the ground trigger for the coil. And basically we're going to try to adjust the carburetor mostly by sound. There's no vacuum ports anywhere on this that I can get to try to utilize vacuum. You know, you adjust the air bleeds till you get the highest manifold vacuum. I'm basically going to try to tune this by ear and, you know, use the tach here to, you know, get it as close as possible. But like I said, when I first got this car, it wouldn't stay running at all. It was running absolute garbage. There was no throttle response, obviously, because the accelerator pump wasn't spraying. And yeah, I have no idea where these adjustments are in the carburetor. So first things first, let's see if this thing fires up. Alright, so I don't know how much of that you can hear over the camera. I mean, this thing is pretty loud. It is basically straight pipe from the header. But if you could hear it, and I'll review in the video, you basically, what you saw and heard was me trying to turn in the air bleeds until I got the highest idle. And if you noticed, by the time I got to the third one over there, because I started from the front to the back, the idle came up so high I had to readjust the idle screw here, the throttle close screw. The reason for that is you want the idle to be, at least the idle circuit to be closed. In the Holey carburetor here, there's usually a slot where the throttle blade is, and what that is doing is as the throttle blade opens, it allows more fuel to go in. So when you're trying to set idle characteristics of the carburetor, you want the throttle blades to be almost closed before you adjust these. So as you're going through and making your fine adjustments, if the idle's coming too high, you want to set your idle back down to, you know, basically whatever you're looking for, depending on manual or automatic transmission. So I have these basically even, and that's the other thing I should point out. These idle bleeds between all four, or two if you just have the two, should be even. You shouldn't have, say, 3/4 here and 2 turns out over there. They should be all either 3/4 or 2 turns. The adjustment I ended up here with is 3/4 on all of them. To me, that seems pretty lean, which makes me wonder that either this carburetor is a little bit too big for this engine, or the jetting in here might be too big. You know, that's kind of, how do I say this? It's kind of hard to determine just sitting here idle if my jetting is too much or not. I mean, if we would take this car to a drag strip, what we would do is put a fresh set of spark plugs in it, run it down the strip, and then read the spark plugs to see where, at least what the color of the spark plugs are, to determine if I need to pull fuel out or give it more fuel. The other way to do it is to put it on a chassis dyno, something that has some sort of you know, O2 sensor measurement, so you can adjust your fuel by your air fuel measurements. I don't have easy access to either one of those, so you know, I might try to convince the guy that owns this car to maybe put a wideband O2 sensor in. You know, that way we can really get this carburetor dialed in really close. I can even install it in such a way that it can be either installed permanently, which I think is nice insurance. You could see while you're driving this thing if you're having any kind of lean condition or anything. I mean, he was also talking about maybe putting nitrous system on this thing, which would be another, you know, you'd want to see if anything was going lean while you're running spray on this thing. So yeah, I mean, as it is right now, I have the carburetor pretty good. The only other thing I'm going to check right now is I'm going to check to make sure none of my gaskets underneath are leaking vacuum, because if I have a vacuum leak, it's also going to throw off my adjustments here. So the way I'm going to test for that is I'm going to fire this thing back up. I'm going to take a can of brake clean, or I mean, you can use carb clean, anything that's flammable, and I'm going to spray all around the base here, and I'm going to listen to see if the idle changes. If the idle changes, you know you have some sort of vacuum leak. So I might have a bad gasket, or it could be the seals in the throttle shafts themselves. But either way, I'd end up pulling the carburetor off and probably just putting a refresh kit in. So let's see if we can't get that to work now. So as you can see, when I was spraying carburetor cleaner around, I noticed mostly on this side that it was dropping my idle. So I must have some sort of vacuum leak somewhere here, either between the carb main body and the throttle plate, or in the throttle shafts. I'm not really sure, but I'm gonna have to pull the carburetor off and try to see if anything's obvious. I might try first, before I do that, tightening the mounting screws and see if it's just a loose carburetor. So I'm going to try that now, and we'll see if it makes any difference. Alright, so the screws weren't very loose. It seemed to make a little bit of a difference. So it might just be that, you know, this thing has what looks like a 1-inch spacer plate in there. You know, it might be just a bad gasket there. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull the carburetor off. I think once I have it off, I might just throw a refresh kit in it just to be on the safe side. Again, I don't know how long it's been sitting. You know, it seems to run okay otherwise. But I mean, a refresh kit is about 50 bucks, so it's not overly expensive. It's pretty easy to do, and it'll just eliminate all the issues with the gaskets. Alright guys, so that's it for today's video. This car will probably make for a few different videos. You know, I'll take you guys along on the journey trying to fix all the little things on it. But as it is right now, I'm gonna have to order some parts. So we'll end the video off here. But as always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you guys. Bye.